right, let's talk about something every Java developer has to deal with. You've built this amazing application logic, and now you've got to connect it to a database. Today, we're jumping right into that classic crossroads. Do you go with the manual control of JDBC or the automatic power of Hibernate? So let's be honest for a second. Think about your last project. Does this question feel a little familiar? Are you finding yourself totally bogged down writing endless SQL queries and managing connections instead of actually building the cool features you wanted to build? Well, that's the exact problem we're going to tackle. Okay, so let's start with the traditional approach, the foundation of it all, JDBC. That's the Java Database Connectivity API. The best way to think about this is like it's your manual toolkit. It's incredibly powerful, and it gives you complete control over everything, but you have to build it all yourself. This really gets to the heart of the problem. See, on one side, you've got your neat Java objects living in your application's memory. And way over on the other side, you have your database tables. With JDBC, you, the developer, are responsible for building that manual SQL code bridge to translate data back and forth between these totally different worlds. And here's the thing, JDBC absolutely works, but man, is it verbose. You find yourself writing the same code over and over and over again. Opening connections, preparing statements, handling result sets. It's not just tedious work, it actually slows down your development and frankly opens the door for a lot more bugs. But what if you didn't have to build that bridge by hand every single time? What if there was a way to just automate it? Well, that brings us to the other side of the coin. Let's talk about Hibernate, the framework that promises to do all that heavy lifting for you. So Hibernate is what we call an ORM, which stands for Object Relational Mapping. And its entire reason for existing is to look at your Java classes and automatically figure out how to save them to and get them from your database tables. It basically acts as a translator, so you don't have to. And the why here is pretty compelling. Right off the bat, it simplifies how you talk to the database and slashes all that repetitive boilerplate code. That means your productivity just skyrockets. And here's a huge one. It's database independent. Since Hibernate is writing the specific SQL for you, you could switch from, say, MySQL to PostgreSQL with almost no code changes. That's a massive win. Okay, time for the showdown. We've got the manual way versus the automatic way. Let's put them head to head and look at two things that really matter to developers day to day. How fast can you code, and how easy is it to maintain that code down the line? You know, when you boil it all down, it really is this simple. With JDBC, you're in there, manually mapping everything, which just naturally means you're writing way more code. With Hibernate, that mapping is automatic, which means you write less code. And less code to write is also less code to maintain, debug, and get wrong. Let's break this down a little more. We talked about code volume and mapping, but look at caching support. With JDBC, if you want to cache data to make your app faster, you have to build that system yourself. Hibernate comes with powerful caching right out of the box, which can be a huge performance boost. And all of this leads to those last two rows, which are the real long-term game changers. Your code becomes so much more easier to maintain, and you can move it between different databases without a massive headache. So all this automation, it kind of sounds like magic, right? How does Hibernate actually pull this off? Well, it's not magic at all, but it is a really clever and structured system. So let's peek behind the curtain for a second. This right here is the core idea of ORM. Hibernate just follows a set of rules to map your code world to your database world. It's a pretty direct translation. A Java class becomes a database table. A variable inside that class becomes a column in the table. And a single object you create becomes a row of data in that table. Simple as that. And the process itself is actually pretty logical. First, Hibernate reads a configuration file that has all your database connection details. It uses that to create something called a session factory. Then, whenever you need to talk to the database, you just open a session, start a transaction, do your work, like creating, reading, or updating your Java objects, and then you commit. Hibernate handles all the messy SQL generation in the background. Okay, but, and this is a big but, it's really important to understand that all this convenience and automation doesn't come for free. There are definitely some trade-offs you need to think about before you dive in. So let's talk about the hidden costs. First off, there is a real learning curve here. You have to get your head around concepts like session management, lazy loading, and transactions. It can definitely trip you up when you're starting out. Second, because Hibernate is an extra layer of abstraction, it can sometimes add a bit of performance overhead compared to raw hand-tuned JDBC. And finally,
If you're doing super complex reporting queries or massive bulk data updates, sometimes writing the SQL by hand is still going to be more efficient.
So where does all of this leave us? It's time for the final verdict. How do you actually decide which tool is the right one for your job? How do you choose between the fine-grained control of JDBC and the incredible convenience of Hibernate?
And really, this is all about you and your project. There's no single better technology here. It's all about which tool is better suited for your specific needs, the scale of your application, and what your team is trying to accomplish.
Hibernate is an absolute game changer for large, complex applications where your object model is rich and developer time is your most precious resource. We're talking big enterprise systems, banking and financial platforms, large e-commerce sites. If getting features built quickly and making the code easy to maintain are your top priorities, then Hibernate is going to be a very powerful friend. On the flip side, if you're building a smaller, simpler app, maybe a high-performance utility, where you need to squeeze out every last drop of performance by hand-tuning every single query, well, then the direct control of JDBC might just be the smarter choice. You don't need a sledgehammer to crack a nut, right? And that really leaves us with the ultimate question you have to ask yourself. It's the core trade-off. For your next project, what's more important? Is it the rapid development and easier maintenance you get with an ORM like Hibernate? Or is it the raw power and granular control you get with JDBC?